Hello, welcome to Targeted Parent Speaks Out. My name is Tamara Sweeney. Today, I am going to try to create an environment that this is like me talking to one of my friends, my best friends. So I'm going to call this Pillow Talk. I put this in my bedroom where it's private, no makeup, and I'm just going to shoot from the heart. I've said I was going to do this for a long time. I think it's almost 6 years now, but I never put it out there because, I was intimidated by the court system. I was afraid of my lawyers. I was afraid of the judges. But I'm past all that. And I'm just going to tell you my story. Hopefully you'll be able to relate and understand what's happening to you also. Because it's not only me. This is happening worldwide. And it's an epidemic that has to be stopped. Okay. My story begins with, my major situation, my major problem with my marriage was raising our children. Both my ex was raised in a different way that I was raised. I guess we had different beliefs. It was something that was never discussed. I just didn't know the extent and the damage it could do to my children. So basically I was that typical mother who was what they call a soccer mom, driving them around. I had 4 kids in 5 years. They were all in sports. They were all in travel sports. You had to be organized. You had to have a schedule. So I was on a tight schedule. I did it the best I could, which I thought I did okay. But I had a parent that always undermined me in front of my children. And that was the root of our problem. In other words, he battled me against everything. Education started at preschool. I tried to follow what the teachers were saying and bringing what the teachers were saying into my home and trying to encourage my kids to do the basics. Read, write, play, I believe in being active and balancing your schedule. So, I don't want my kids just studying. I don't want my kids just, playing sports. I want to give them a taste of everything, a little bit of everything. And then they can decide what they like and what they dislike. Anyway, so as my kids are getting older, I didn't realize how bad it was, but if I said yes, my ex would say no. If I said no, my ex would say yes. To give you examples, as they got to teenage years, it got worse. But my spouse undermined me as a mother, and that is the worst thing you can do. Parents need to be united. They have to stick together. They have to communicate. I would even beg my ex to, if he didn't agree with what I was saying, to take me upstairs, tell me in the bedroom, I don't like that. I don't agree with that. Let's try to work on something else and stick with a game plan together so that the kids couldn't play one parent against the other. And this is when I was married. So things started escalating as the kids became teenagers. I was always the bad parent. I was always demeaned. I was always disrespected. So in a child's mind, if you have one parent mocking and making fun of that other parent, it's really damaging to a child. they don't know what to believe. For example, if my ex told my, I'm telling my children that the sky's blue. The teachers are telling them the sky's blue. But my ex swears up and down that the sky is purple and keeps beating it in their heads. What are my kids supposed to believe? That's a hard thing because children trust their parents. Absolutely trust the parents. Who else are they supposed to trust? So anyway, that was my marriage. And I wanted to leave probably when my son was about 5. I remember having speeches and arguments and, I just sounded redundant all the time, trying to get my husband to support me. And not that my decisions are better than his, but at least to talk about it and communicate about it and come up with some kind of game plan on how to raise my children. So I'm going to skip all the way up to, I stayed an extra, 14 years. I was with this man for 20 years, married 19, and I remember when Dylan was 5, right then I wanted to leave, and I should have taken my kids and left. My husband's routine in the very beginning, we kind of moved all over. We lived in California, had 2 boys there. We all of a sudden moved from California to Connecticut, built a huge house, a 5,500 square foot house. I actually designed it. I was pretty proud of myself. Then I got pregnant again, had my daughter, got pregnant again, had my youngest son. And, I just wanted to fill up that house. I wanted 4 more kids. I wanted 8 kids. But anyway, at that point when we were in Connecticut, my ex was working for a company called W.P. Hickman. He decided to leave that company and open up his own business. He wanted to build an empire for my children. So I encouraged him. I gave him money. I took out my stocks. Because at the time I was working for Roadway, or RPS I should say, and we were bought out by FedEx. So I gave him my stocks. And off we go. I encouraged him. I was proud of him. I'm like, this is great. We're building a business for our own children. He goes out. It started, he was home, when he was with W.P. Hickman. Here and there. He traveled a little bit, but not as much. But when he started his own business, his first quest, when he left Connecticut, he was gone for 17 days. Then after that, he came home, he was gone for a month. And then our normal routine was, he was gone 6 weeks, home on the weekend, gone 6 weeks. I had no problems with it. I just told myself I have to do everything myself. So not only was I raising the children, I also was raising his handicapped brother. He came on the weekends. We built the house handicap accessible for him. I wanted to include him in the family, and I wanted him to feel safe, and I wanted him to feel loved because he had a hard enough life. And I also let his family come in, his brother, my sister-in-law, his other brother and my sister-in-law, and I think they only had 2 children at the time. And she might have been pregnant. That was fine. They lived in our basement, had no problems. I was more than willing to help, our families on both sides. So the routine was he was gone 6 weeks, home on the weekend, gone 6 weeks. So for me, in my mind, I'm like, okay, now I'm the parent. I have control of, raising these kids because he's not here as a father. Which is okay. He's working. I'm not bashing him by any means. He was starting his business, or so I was told. And that was my life. So when he would come home, the chaos would follow. But in my mind, I'm like, I only have a weekend and then he's gone 6 weeks, so I'll just put up with it. So I did that over and over and over again for 14 years. We end up, I was told we were financially in a mess for 3 years. I told my ex, it's time to move. I wanted to stay in Connecticut because I loved the people there. I loved that bedroom community, everyone having 2 acres of space in between each other. And I had great friends. Renee, Bridget, you guys know who you are. And thank you for still supporting me, even though I don't get to talk to you as much. Thank you. But we end up moving to Pennsylvania, back to my house, back to my hometown. And that's where all the problems start. Getting more vicious, I guess. So, we're now in Pennsylvania. And I'm working for an advertising company. I do very well. And I went back to work because I thought our situation was pretty bad. I did very well. So now I'm working, raising the kids by myself, while my ex is still out trying to build his empire. My ex and I are constantly yelling at each other in front of the children, so I never liked that. I tried to keep things as normal as whatever you want to call normal. But I couldn't take it anymore. I was demeaned. I would get my kids, here's some examples. I would get my kids a couple jobs. The one was a lifeguard job in the summer. And my kids were excited about it. They worked out, they trained, they passed all the tests. And my ex-spouse comes up to my kids going, you don't have to work. I'll pay you $10 an hour to sit on the beach. So my kids quit. And my kids were never held accountable. My kids were getting out of control. I knew it. I tried to tell my ex about it. He wouldn't listen. One example in Pennsylvania was my husband was actually home. And the kids wanted to go to Kohl's. And I'm like telling my husband, there's no reason for them to go to Kohl's. They have everything they possibly could want. They don't need clothes. There's no reason. They're just going to get in trouble. So right in front of the children, my ex starts demeaning me and saying, you don't like our kids. You're mean to our kids. You don't trust our kids. All these signals built into my kids' heads. And I was like, I washed my hands of it. Said, fine, let them go to Kohl's. Half an hour later, we get a call from the police department. Your kids have been arrested for shoplifting. I just took the phone call, handed it to him, and again, my children were never held accountable. I now have to take my kids' classes. I now have to take my kids to, community service, while my husband is out traveling the world building the business. So in other words, I always had to pick up the pieces. And if I tried to discipline my children, and I'm not talking, I don't hit my kids, I'm talking about taking away privileges or grounding them or, something minor. So my ex would talk on the phone to my children and say, is mom acting crazy? Does she need her medication again? I have never been put on medication. I'm not crazy. And he just kept building that into the children's head. And what that does to a child, again, is very damaging. I'm sorry this is so long. I'm trying to give you examples of what went on in my house, which led to this parent alienation. So after, I was working at an advertising company. Stayed there, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. Somewhere in that vicinity. I end up quitting because I wanted to put more pressure on my ex to actually get there and work, because I thought we had no money and I'm not seeing any income coming in. He keeps telling me there's no income. So, and on the other reason, my kids were getting out of hand and they needed more adults around them in the house to keep them on the right path. And that's what's wrong with this world. I think, I don't know, back in the 80s, we all bought like big houses. We have to have 2 jobs, both the mother and the father working to support our families. And I really believe that we have to go back to the old ways. I don't care if it's the father or mother. Somebody has to stay home, take care of the children, because that job is the hardest job out there. And my own feeling and my own opinion is the parent that stays home should get paid by the government, because it is the most important job in the world. But anyway, I end up quitting my job. My ex now is traveling more, and I'm at home, which is fine. Then years go by. We're still financially a mess, is what I was told. And the demeaning, the disrespect, the vile and vulgar things that were going on in my house were getting out of control. So I personally wanted to feel respected again. I wanted to get back into the work world and feel respected. So I didn't want to go full time. I just wanted to feel respected. So I actually had people looking at me through LinkedIn. I accepted. I ended up going part-time, and then this company wanted me to go full-time. So I didn't accept the full-time position because I knew, my teenagers were still a mess, and I needed to be there for them. So I went part-time. I started feeling the respect again, started feeling good about myself. I'm exercising, working my body, my mind, and my soul, because I can't grasp or understand why this man that says he loves me is constantly beating me down on my beliefs, on my, parenting skills, on my disciplining, or whatever you want to call it, raising the children. So I ended up talking to some of the neighbors. I guess they got tired of me talking about it, so I kept my mouth quiet, because he started making people thinking that I'm the crazy one, and he's good at it. So after all this, I go to work. I feel respected. I'm being trained by my bosses on a daily basis. And I end up falling in love with someone I work with. So, and I'm going to open this up to the whole world. I end up going back to my husband asking that I'm done. I'm finally done. I asked for a separation. I wanted to keep everything the same. I'll just, stay in the house. I'll keep raising the kids. I'm not looking for money. I just want the kids to stay the same. And maybe my ex and I can be friends now if we separate. Or I'll even move into a condo, and I wanted the kids' routine to stay the same. That's all that was important to me. But that didn't happen. I ended up telling my husband at the time that I was in love with someone else, and that's when the noose was hung around my neck and I was done. At this point, he ends up playing, I don't want to call him victim, I hate that word, but he was very hurt, which I understand. But he made me feel so bad, so dirty, so, as he would call it, immorally imbalanced, that he put the shame on me, and he did it hard. And I took it hard. So I decided to stay another 9 months. And pretty much those 9 months I stayed in my bedroom, 4 walls, and basically was afraid to come out. During this time, my ex started gaslighting. I don't know if you understand what that means, but that's when you start playing games on people's minds and trying to make them feel crazy. I knew in my soul, I knew in my heart that I wasn't crazy. I don't take medication. I beat myself down. I'm hard on myself, but I do not. I knew I wasn't crazy. Let's put it that way. Anyway, my ex or my daughter, I don't know what the true story is. Somebody got this psychic involved. She's from Stone Harbor, New Jersey. She's now in our lives and doing some things around the house. But my ex told my children about every single detail I told my ex. So I had been honest with my husband at the time, told him I had an affair, told him I wanted to leave. And once I served those papers, those divorce papers, on May 7th, 2012, my ex told my boys, my older boys, at the time they were 14 and 16. As he says, they are adults and they could handle anything because they're so mature. I was devastated. I was humiliated. I was distraught. Thank God I had my high school friends. I didn't know how I was going to get through this. I felt like an awful, awful person. But this is what started the whole hate, anger campaign against me. I think I'll leave it there because this is now almost 25 minutes long. But stay tuned. The next section, I'm going to go over how this man went through gaslighting, tried to put me into a mental home, tried to frame me with drugs, tarnished my reputation through the town, through the state, through New Jersey. How he campaigned and hired my brother-in-law, and destroyed my parents. So, stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.